What is up, dudes and dudettes, and all our comrades in between? This is the Rad Left podcast with James. I'm James, and Casey. This is Casey.
Hey, everybody.
Today's episode is brought to you by GameStop. Everybody's least favorite location for purchasing games is now even more fun now that it is absolutely derailing billionaires in the marketplace.
Woo!
So that's exciting. We'll talk about that a little bit. And then we have an exciting guest today. Bubbles is back. I don't know if you remember our episode where we were talking with them about their podcast, KK Killed, or just Killed. Pretty interesting stuff going on there. But today we're going to be talking about drugs and society. And so this is something that we kind of touched on a little bit on the last time about being excited for. And so I'm glad we're actually getting to have this conversation now. So
Me too.
before we jump into any of the heady stuff, what's going on with you, Casey? Anything of note?
Just watching the world burn, buddy. Just watching the world burn.
It's pretty entertaining, isn't it?
It is. It actually is. It's I've always dreamed of this day ever since I read Stephen King books as a young child, and I always imagined what it'd be like to live during the apocalypse. And I didn't realize it would be so I don't know,
Comical? Comical? Is comical the right word?
Yeah, there's like a weird humor to it.
Yeah, it's like something that you couldn't really write.
Yeah, you couldn't write this.
Yeah, it's super weird.
And it also I guess I never imagined how many people would just go on like business as usual, but it makes sense.
Yeah.
It makes
I mean, what else are we supposed to do? I mean, what
Yeah.
do you do? Just like pop a squat on your floor and like cry? I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes I want to do that, but
Yep. I think some people probably do that.
yeah,
I
I
don't
guess
know.
I do a version of that. I just sit on my couch and just binge like all the way through Futurama in one sitting.
Yeah. See, that sounds wonderful. Thank God this happened during the Netflix era. What if this was the end of the world and like the Spanish flu must have really sucked. They had nothing to
Dude, seriously.
like you just have to just stare at your crops that are growing.
Your crops.
Just like, oh man, I hope that one gets taller. I don't know. I don't know what I would do. It's creepy. But yes,
Oh shit.
I think if I start screaming, I just won't stop. That's the thing. So I'm trying to just I guess
Yeah.
I'm doing whatever I can to yeah. I read the news though, and all you gotta do is read the news about water shortages and water's a commodity now. That's something there's this whole list of things we have to worry about that we aren't even able to worry about because we're too busy worrying about the other stuff we gotta worry about. And that's scary.
Yeah, so what's up with that then? So so water's now being traded on the
Yeah,
stock
yeah.
market, or like how does that work?
I'm not exactly sure, but I know that for the first time in history, water is now a commodity, just like oil and all that stuff. So we're basically headed for sure towards a Mad Max future, which we already kind of knew that was going to happen. Because I mean, yeah, we did rejoin the Paris climate deal, which is a good step, but I mean, nobody's done anything. Like I read this article. I'm in this one group called Deep Adaptation about these are people that are like they're not lying to themselves. I mean, they're like, yeah, it's going to get real bad, and they've written books, and they're all these people, and so I'm always reading like the worst case scenario, which that's just how my mind works. I got to know how bad things are going to get, so I know what to worry about. I love to worry about things. It's like a
Yeah.
hobby. I've made it into a fine art. But this one guy who's like a climate scientist, he just talks about how he's spent all these years warning people, and all it's done is like driven him and his wife apart because they're just both so miserable about the future that's coming. Their kid's like suicidal because he believes there's no future. He has like an
Yeah.
outside toilet that he uses, and he's the only one that uses it. And it's just basically turned him into like, he's just like alone because like nobody wants to talk to him. So that's
Yeah.
how people treat you if you don't get killed trying to be a climate activist, because there's all those people that die too being climate activists. I'm sure you've heard of that stuff. Because people don't want you to talk about it. But that's a whole other thing. We don't even have to worry about that for another, like, I don't know, 10 years.
Yeah.
So let's worry about what's happening now.
Yes.
What do you got? What do we got? What can we worry about? I need it.
So the hot topic of today and in recent times is definitely the GameStop Reddit short squeeze is what it's called.
Oh.
So I don't protest to be anywhere near the level of understanding of this stuff to talk on it intelligently. So luckily, I have the power of the internet, and shout out to my buddy Reed who sent this to our friend group chat. Trying to explain it to anybody who's having trouble comprehending what's exactly going on. And I was just going to read it real quick.
Yeah.
So what is happening with the GameStop share right now? First, let's look at some basics. What is a short in trading? A short is when you borrow a stock from a broker and sell it immediately at its current price. Then you hope the stock's price falls such that you can buy the stock back at a lower price and return the shares you borrowed to your broker, but keeping the difference. For example, let's say I want to short XYZ, which has a current price of $10. I borrow one share and sell it immediately at $10. I have $10 now, but I owe my broker the one share I borrowed. Then let's say the price of XYZ drops to $7. I now decide to cover, aka buy it back, my short position and buy one share at $7 and return the one borrowed share to my broker. I made $10 when I sold and only had to pay $7 to buy it back lower, so my profit is $3 difference. But now, and so basically that's what it's saying. So it's like these are people betting that the stock is going to go down is pretty much it. And that's, it's a whole huge thing. If you've ever seen the Big Short, the movie with Steve Carell, and there's a bunch of really well-known people in it. It's a pretty interesting movie. I had to watch it a couple times to like really fully understand it, but it's pretty interesting. I recommend it. And then let's say, but now let's say that instead of the XYZ price dropping to $7, it goes up to $15. I still need to return the one borrowed share to my broker, except now it's going to cost me a lot more to buy it back. If I buy it back at $15 so I can return the borrowed shares, my losses will be the $5 difference between selling the $10 stock and rebuying it at $15. Since the price can rise indefinitely, my potential losses as a short seller are unlimited. At some point, I have to buy it back to return the shares I borrowed. The more the price rises, the bigger my losses. Okay, and then this is where GameStop comes in. A few weeks ago, a Redditor on r/Wall Street Bets noticed that a hedge fund had taken a massive amount of short trades against GameStop. They convinced everyone on the thread to join forces and buy as much GameStop stock as possible. This made the price rise, and the hedge fund's short position started to lose billions. Their losses even surpassed the $13.1 billion that the hedge fund was worth. Eventually, the hedge fund had to close their short positions, buy back all the GameStop stocks back at the much, much higher prices, sending the price even higher. This is called a short squeeze. Now the hedge fund is declaring bankruptcy, and now all of Wall Street is saying that the public joining together in this fashion should be illegal.
Nah.
So, and on top of that, there's even more shenanigans on top of that, because Robinhood today stopped allowing people to buy GameStop and Naked and a slew of other shorted stocks that Reddit has picked up on.
What exactly is Robinhood, just for people like me that don't know what?
Yeah. So Robinhood is literally an app for your phone that you can sell and buy stocks. A lot of people use it for like really low amounts of stocks. It's not, you can, I think, do really heavy, trading with it, but there are much better tools for that. It's meant to, the whole idea, and that's why they call it Robinhood, which makes this extra ironic, was that they're bringing the power back to the people. Right. So like the everyday average person can start, at least learning and getting used to the idea of trading stocks on a regular basis on the open market. Right? So that's the whole thing, like free trade. Everybody can access this. Well, today, them putting the blocks on buying these stocks literally took away the power from the people and literally manipulated the markets. So this is market manipulation. And there are a slew of Congress people who have basically called out Robinhood on this, saying it's unlawful, including AOC, Ted Cruz, Rashida. There's a whole bunch of them, and it got really spicy where AOC tweeted out, what's that?
I was going to say, that's a sure sign of the apocalypse when Ted Cruz agrees with something.
Yeah, it gets even spicier because AOC tweeted out how it was not it's against the whole idea of a free market and, should be illegal that they stopped people from being able to buy these stocks.
Yeah,
And then Ted Cruz retweeted her saying, "I agree."
that's
And
crazy.
then she tweeted back, she's like, "You tried to have me killed
Yeah.
like a couple weeks ago, so fuck
Sorry.
yourself, you weird troll."
Did
I mean, she didn't
but
say that.
basically, right?
But basically, yeah. She said, if you really want to help, stop retweeting me and resign.
Yeah,
So
no shit.
AOC always with the spicy
She's awesome.
tweets.
She's the best.
Yeah.
I can't wait till she becomes president.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, as long as the assassination attempts don't keep
Exactly.
happening. My God.
She'll be running against Eric Trump.
Yeah.
That's
She
what I-
did say in November, after the election results came back and the centrists started blaming her and her fellow progressives for the loss in the House, the losses that they were taking in the House. She said, she straight up told I don't remember which news news organization it was, but she said that she was thinking about quitting politics.
Oh,
And that was before there was an assassination
oh
attempt.
no, that sucks. Damn it, no. See, that's the problem, man. They run the good ones out.
Yep.
Or they shoot them in the head while they're in a limousine with their wife.
Yep.
You know way more than I do. I think you even bought some stocks today, so thank you for the information. I'm very oblivious to a lot of these things, which is probably not great, but I'm dealing with the things I got to deal with as I do. But
Yeah.
Biden, I do see that, we've kind of stopped hearing, I mean, we've kind of, yay, he won. We're happy. He's signing some pretty neat executive orders. I'll give it that. I'm glad he's turning around a lot of Trump's bullshit. I still like him better than Trump, obviously, but that's a very low bar. And we've noticed that Republicans are starting to, they had a choice, and they're already starting to kind of on the majority side with Trump. Like you're seeing where Trump is, like they're having meetings with him down in Florida. And the ones that are anti-Trump are kind of the minority of the Republican Party, we're noticing. But I just wanted to say real quick before we get to our guests, which I can't wait to get to. There's one in particular we need to watch out for, and I know we're going to be talking about this crazy biatch, Marjorie Taylor Greene. She's the one that wanted to impeach Joe Biden already, and she's also a huge QAnon supporter. She's just a whole bag of crazy, and she's the one that said we should kill liberals and like have them, like, she's just nuts, and she's super QAnon, which is redneck Scientology, as we know. Yeah, so just watch out for her, Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Jeez.
I want to forget these names. I've already forgotten the one QAnon that was up in the runoffs. Thank God I forgot her name. I don't want to remember. I don't want to keep. We have only so much headspace to keep these bastards in, and once they're done, we flush them. But this one's one we're gonna probably want to talk about. But I'm a little.
Are you talking about Kelly Loeffler?
Yeah, that's bad. Now you made the synapse again, James.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, but that lizard is just so hard for me to forget. That lizard robot.
I know.
Fuck that bitch.
She was crazy. But I'm kind of bummed that Biden was in such a hurry to side with the billionaires during all this GameStop.
Oh, yeah.
We're hearing a lot of the progressives are texting like, hey, or, tweeting, hey, what's up with that stimulus package you were so excited to send everybody? Why have we not heard about that again? It's been like 2 weeks now. Like we're talking about Trump impeachment. We're talking about GameStop. You're signing executive orders. That's great. But where's that stimulus money you were going to give everyone that we needed?
Yep.
So there's that. I'm just leaving that out there. We'll see how that turns out. But
that made me think of when you were talking about the different versions of the Republicans, the people who are following Trump, and the what liberals and more moderate Republicans think of as true Republicans. Like your classical, I'm not that bad Republicans.
Yeah.
So I recently saw a post from Rank Choice Voting. It's like Rank the Vote, I think, on Facebook. They posted this poll that they obtained, where it said 17% of people on the right, or on their poll they did, identify with Trump. 17% identify with their party lines, which they're differentiating. Which we've gone into before, how I don't really fully believe that there is a difference, but they are saying that it's different.
Right.
And then 17% of people are siding with Biden, and 17% are siding with more progressives like Bernie and AOC and stuff, showing that there's technically in this country that there's a divide. There's like 4 divisions, which I think makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think we need to be. I just want to keep throwing that out there. Ranked choice voting. It just needs to. We need to move the Overton window and have that just be an everyday, demand from the average person that we need more representation. And for that to happen, we need more options. And for that to happen, we have to make it so it's not like the standard. Oh, don't vote for this. You're pulling away votes from that.
Right. I see what
argument.
you're saying. Yeah. Finally, we'll get what they have in other countries, more than just 2 choices and all that.
Absolutely.
Right? That's true. I think maybe people are getting a little more ready for that. I just, all I think about, and I know if I had a time machine, like if we went back and Bernie had won 2016, I really do wonder where we'd be as a country right now. I really am just curious. I'll never know that in this timeline. We're going to have to ride this out. But boy, things seem to, I just feel like we're just wasting so much time on this shit. Like, why are we even dealing with racism? Like, why is that even that is such a big deal again? It's like, guys, we have that is I wish it wasn't a problem, but it feels like it's like, fuck. Like, now we got to deal with this shit. It's like going back and worrying about fucking rickets or something. I don't know. It's like, that should be not a thing anymore, guys.
Yeah.
The world's burning. Anyways.
Yep. Oh, and just I'm being a little ADD here, but just as a callback, or just going back to what we were talking about with the stocks, just so you know, like this is just kind of an example of the volatility of this stuff, and I'm not even on one of the main ones, but like you had sent me a post that had a bunch of links, or had a bunch of the stocks that people are fucking with on Reddit right now, and I checked all of them. Only one of them was still available on Robinhood. Yeah. And I think I put like $40 into it or something, and I'm already up $3.50. I swear to God, that was like 10, 15 minutes ago. Wow. So that's just how volatile this shit is. And that's not even like, if you got in on the ground floor of Naked Juices, it was a penny stock, and then went up to like over $2. So if you put in $100, boom, baby, you just made $2,000. Like,
damn.
Yeah.
Crazy.
It's fucking crazy. But anyway, do you want to go ahead and introduce our guest?
Sure. We had Bubble on before. I think, what was that? Was a couple months? Time's weird. A couple months ago, was that?
Yeah, something like that.
But it was wonderful. Like you already said at the beginning of the show, if you're just joining us, they have a wonderful podcast called Killed. I have listened to most of it. I dropped off a bit there. My wife did finish it though, and she said it's amazing. So I'm going to continue listening, but we're not really talking about that today. We might touch on that, but we're going to talk today about, I think, basically drugs, right? And drug rehabilitation and things like that. Without any further ado, Bubble West, everybody.
Hey, everyone.
How you doing?
So excited to be back on here.
You're our favorite.
I do want to say, since this is being live streamed, this is a very weird laptop I'm using. I didn't realize the camera on this is all the way at the bottom right. So if I'm like looking up into space, I do apologize. I'm not high.
That's all right.
That's all right. I'm like surrounded by screens, so I'm always like looking all over the place. So no worries.
Yeah,
we're not fancy here on the rad left.
You're looking up, and I'm kind of right staring at something, right? So we all get a
little off.
Yeah. All right. So what do we want to talk about today? How do you want to do this?
Yeah. Well, I prepared some stuff, but if you guys want to do like a check-in first, I can let you know how things are going with Pam and the podcast, and then we can dive in.
That. Yeah, let's do that.
So the podcast still has new episodes that are coming out. I got a corporate job that I can do from home, and it's kind of taken some of my time. I'm not going to say where I work, just because this is a podcast about, this episode specifically is about drugs.
Yeah, don't out yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. Corporate world's a bit different. But yeah, so that's been eating some of my time. But the next episode to come out is our first piece of concrete proof of some of the things that are in Pam's story. And then the next one, we're going to be talking to the therapist who originally started her down her journey of recovery. And it's going to be more about what to do if you know someone who's been through similar things as Pam. So we're not going to be talking as much about Pam, but about other survivors of abuse, of sexual abuse, and other things that happen. Yeah.
That's really awesome that you're going to be taking that avenue. I like that.
Yeah, I figured we've done a lot of her story so far, and I know some people because we've had people reach out. I know some people that are listening along because it affects them. Not maybe not Pam's story directly, but people who have gone through things like Pam. So
Sure.
If you get the chance, I don't know how much time you have to listen to podcasts. You have an at home job, so maybe you do. But I don't know if you've listened to the Chasing Cosby one yet. Have you heard
I have
that?
not, but I can already guess.
Oh wow, it's I mean, you know the story through what the media tells you, but when you hear the details and the stories from the survivors' points of view, it's this whole other thing that like it's very much reminded me and was done as well as yours. And I think you should get a chance if you get a chance, man. I would do it. But
Yeah, I'll check it out for sure.
yeah, but yeah, check out Killed, everybody. It's great. I can vouch for it. All right, let's talk about some drugs.
All right, let's do it. So I set up this whole like thing that I have on another screen, and it kind of just like keeps me in check so I don't go off too far. But first thing that I put on here is kind of like a disclaimer page. So I do want to say that I'm not a historian or an anthropologist. I'm not an expert in any way on any of these things, but a lot of the information that I'm going to be providing you guys, it comes from experts. I'll say who they are. I'll say when it was like published, where you can find it if you want to dig into it more. We're going to talk about a lot of the history that got us to here. I think most of us know certain drugs are illegal, certain drugs are not, and then there are others that are having their kind of like transition into a more commercial space, right?
Yeah.
That's the gist of the climate that we're in. But what we don't necessarily know is how we got here, you know? And I think that's super interesting. So we're going to be talking about religion, how drugs played a big part in most religion. And I'm not religious, but I'm not going to say that I'm not anti-religion. So if you are listening to this and you're religious, just take it with a grain of salt. You can believe what you want to believe.
Sure.
I do as well. Yeah, that's kind of my
Yeah,
disclaimer page.
I feel like that's a pretty similar stance that we've taken here on the Rad Left as well. I feel like it's the only one that really makes sense. Like, I don't care what you do, live your life.
Yeah, exactly. And I should say, you don't have to be into drugs. You don't have to have ever done any drugs to get something out of what I'm going to be bringing to you. This isn't like a
No,
pro
no.
drugs thing,
Yeah.
and it's also not like a lecture against drugs either. It's just like how did we get here? You
Yeah.
know, like what happened? Okay, so I kind of already said I'm going to be taking you into like a revisionist history of Earth, but through this very specific lens. I think history can be a little boring, especially when you think of it temporally, like this happened and then this happened, and here's a date I should know, and here's a date I should know. But when you look at history through a lens, it becomes a lot more interesting. So, like an example I have is through a lens of temperature. And you don't necessarily think of temperature as having an impact on anything historical, but where certain things took place and how different cultures developed based on their climates and on their temperature had a massive impact. So like I can already tell you, cultures, we know these cultures that happen in warmer places, that grew up in warmer places, they're a lot more open, they're a lot more community driven. If you think about the major cultural festivals that happen in the world, think of like Carnival in Brazil, or Denali in India, the running of the bulls in the Tomatina in Spain. They happen in these cultures that are much more open. I'm going to say warm temperature wise, right? We have these words in our language that associate to how these different places developed
Mhm.
based on this one small little detail. And so we can do the same thing with drugs, basically. So let's see. I kind of already said that, so I'm gonna skip that. Sorry, guys. This is my first time doing
Oh,
like
you're doing great.
a
You're doing
TED
great.
Talk style thing, but if we can still have banter and stuff, so don't feel like.
Sure. Boo.
No, I think so far that's interesting the point you just made because I've noticed that too. You know, it's just strange how I think when you're like you can even notice that being in a bigger city, if you're not like if you're gonna have a warmer climate, which is gonna have more of a celebratory vibe and bigger festivals because you're outside more, then obviously drugs and things are gonna be brought into that. So being around that, it's not as scary. Just like being around certain people, you know, when you're in bigger cities with more culture, it's not as crazy. But you know, I have friends back home that you know I just know they're not around certain types of people with beliefs that I'm so comfortable with, and you can just see the bias in them, you know, because they're just not around it. Or you
Yeah,
know,
and
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No,
Like,
that's,
and
that's basically it. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
yeah, if you like that one spit, like temperature is definitely not what I came on here to talk about, but you can dig into it. And so, like, if you think about the South is a really warm, friendly place, a lot of hugging, a lot of, if like telling the things that are going on in your life instead of saying I'm fine and moving on. But then because it's warm, it was also where the slave trade normally was taking place. You know, slaves didn't come up north because there just wasn't crops as like for a full year to be here. You know, there were some slaves in the northern states, but that predominantly a commercial enterprise of the South. And so you've got these conflicting things, both of them created by this one little factor, this one lens to look through history, and that's temperature. And you're right, going out to California, there's this whole movement of people. There still is a movement of people to California following the heat, and it's the people that that want that experience, that want that adventure, you know, gold rush, that
Yep.
kind of thing.
New Orleans. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. Mardi Gras is another really big festival. It takes place
Yep.
in a warmer climate.
You don't
Um,
get that in Maine. You don't get that in Maine. They're not going crazy up in Maine.
Definitely not Maine. And if you look at Europe as like a microcosm, the Swedes, the Finns, the Norse, they're really progressive, right? But
Yeah.
they are a colder culture, meaning they're not going to go up and hug everyone that they see.
Yeah.
They're not necessarily going to be open about all the problems in their household. You think
Yeah.
contrast that to maybe a tribe in Africa where the entire village is involved in raising the youth of the village. It's a drastic difference based on just temperature, you know?
Yeah. That's
Sure.
interesting.
I
Yeah.
went to a festival in Winter Park once. That was interesting, but there definitely wasn't as many people as if, or as compared to festivals of the same size that would be, you know, in a more normal, traditional temperature.
Yeah, exactly. So when we start to think about these lenses, we start to think about maybe let's try to evaluate history through the lens of drugs. We really got to think about our behavioral science, right? So the temperature is one thing. Like we can kind of say, okay, I'm going to be out in the open all year long. Like I can go outside all year long. So it's going to have effects like that. But what is it about our minds and our the way of viewing our world that allows this to have an impact? And I want to start with this concept of cause and relation. We are animals. We seek to like figure out what's going on around us. And maybe we don't have all the answers, but that's just one of our needs. And most animals have this, actually. We're not the only cognizant beings on this earth. If you scold your dog for no reason, let's say you just yell at your dog's going to look around to try to figure out what it did to deserve this scolding, right? Let's see, I have it written down. In 1948, there was this behavioral scientist named B.F. Skinner published this article in the Journal of Experimental Psychology about pigeon psychology. If you have a pigeon in a cage and there's a little trap door that releases food, whatever the pigeon's doing at the time the door is opened, it creates this, it's pigeon superstition is what he called it. It creates this connection that doesn't exist. Like the door is on a timer, but if the pigeon was flapping its wings at the time the door was opened, it's going to flap its wings until it opens again. If it was shaking its head around, it's going to shake its head around, convinced that doing that action is going to result in the reward. And we're very similar to this, right? For the longest part of human history, we did not have the answers on what drugs were. You know, so when we start to look at what effects does this drug have or that drug have on my body, if
Mhm.
I didn't know about the microscopic world, if I didn't know about the different substances that are in different parts of nature, then I can start to make all these different associations. It's this
Sure.
massive thing of cause and effect and superstition combined, creating a result or creating a cause from a result that's not linked to it. And
Yeah.
that's where all these things start to take place. And it's really cool.
Yeah, well, yeah, especially like when you like think about cultures like, oh, who are the people that would like do bloodletting? I guess it was probably like the ancient Grecian folk,
Yeah,
where they would like they thought that the sickness was in your blood, so they would like get rid of your blood, which ironically had a strange effect because one of the main things that they were being affected by was was a disease that it was a disease of the blood, so it did cure people like a good percentage of the time, but it had nothing to do with getting rid of the blood. It was just like
It was a superstition, right? It
yeah,
was not
yeah,
having all the knowledge. We think of superstition as like breaking a window and then or breaking a mirror, and then like the next day you get fired from your job and you're like, oh, that must be because I broke that window. But superstition
right,
really is just aligning something that has no relation to something else and thinking truly, if I wear this color socks while I play my soccer game, I'm more likely to win the game. You know, that's
right.
what superstition is. And that starts to bleed into the spiritual world. So we're going to first talk about the creation of these societies and the religions around them. But one really good example of this this kind of superstition impacting a more spiritual thing is cats. Actually, it's kind of funny. So in Edo, Japan, there was this wealthy, very spiritual man. This is the agreed upon history of where this comes from. So it could have been a number of other factors, but this wealthy man, right, he's walking and it starts to rain and he's outside of a shrine. He sees a giant tree, takes shelter under the tree. That's should be end of story. A cat crosses his path. It like looks at him and then it goes into the shrine. And this man, like in the back of his head, is like, this cat wants me to follow him. It's probably drier in the shrine anyways, right? He goes into the shrine, and as he goes in, lightning hits the tree. The tree falls where he was sitting, right?
Yeah.
This is the agreed upon origin of the lucky cat, right?
Huh.
So the lucky cat is the symbol of prosperity and luck. You can find it in almost any Asian restaurant. It doesn't have to be Japanese. It has a Japanese origin, but you see it in Chinese restaurants. It is this massively lucky thing that people associate with a spiritualism, and they've created this cause and effect that, I mean, if you believe in it, then I'm not going to say that you're wrong. But I don't think the majority of us actually would buy a lucky cat and expect to see financial gain or better luck in the days to come. Simultaneously, on the other side of the world, maybe in a different period of history, but black cats are getting associated to consequential events that probably have nothing to do with a black cat. You know, a black cat crosses the road and then your mother's sister gets ill, right? That person has created this superstition. So they have these positive and negative things. And we're going to talk a lot about that with drugs, and especially how different religions have transformed. so um so yeah, we have these incredibly complex experiences on drugs, right? If you've never done drugs, you still know this. If you like your brain has these almost monumental experiences, and if you don't know that you're on the drug, first of all, like if you don't know how it got
Yeah.
into your body, and you've never even heard of the drug, if you don't even know drugs exist, imagine how you would start to view the world around you, you know, right? You go on an acid trip and you could come up with a number of different reasons why this is happening. Maybe there's a higher power that it's happening to you. Maybe you are being controlled by a witch. You know, there are all these different things that have these concrete to you realities, but they're not actually what's going on. It's that you've ingested something. And
Yeah.
so really fast, I did want to talk about drugs in general, because it is like a term that we're bringing up, you know. So drugs, according to the dictionary, right, is a substance that causes a change in organism's physiology or psychology. So really, anything that has an impact to your body is considered a drug. Now, we today kind of exclude food, but there are some foods that have psychological effects. There, you can think of chocolate. You can think of fatty fish. Even is one that has chemicals that go
Cheese.
into. Yeah, exactly.
Cheese, very addictive.
So
Gluten.
and then we've also kind of separated out medicine, although some medicines we just use the blanket term drug, but anything basically, it's any substance that has any sort of impact on your body. So it could be Advil, it could be meth, it could be gas fumes in a tunnel. You know, I wrote
I'll
down
take
the
all of the above.
sun, the sun, fermented foods, bread and kimchi, and all these different things. They have these psychological effects on us. And physiological, but we're talking more about the psychological here, right?
Yeah.
All right, so let's go way back.
Where the hell am I drugs?
Let's go way back. Let's talk about the Aztecs, the Inca, the Maya, the Shinto. You talked about bloodletting in Greece. These were very, very superstitious people. These were people that we know had the wrong answer. If two people were battling each other and someone died and then the crops were really good, then they would start ritual sacrifice of people on their pyramids in Mexico or in Guatemala or wherever. And that would be to them, okay, we're going to have prosperity. That's their lucky cat. But let's see.
We should also pay attention to this because we are very close to at any moment falling backwards into that superstitious shit. Because we see that all the time in history that like you think you're going forward, but I mean, people fall back on superstition all the time. That's pretty much what QAnon is. It's like just a bunch of people coming up with some weird ass shit and then everyone agreeing like, yep, that makes sense. And then there you go.
Yeah, it's not only that, like we can see this, obviously this is the rad left, but we can see this in pretty much everyone. Like I have my little bouts of superstition.
Yeah.
I know people, let's leave politics out of it, who think that they could be monitored by the overlords, and obviously you're probably not the most interesting person in the world to be monitored.
I don't know. I get into some weird shit, man.
Well, then maybe someone's monitoring
I'm
you.
just kidding. My shit's really boring.
The OCD I had reminded me a lot of what you were saying with superstition, because I still suffer from OCD, but not like to the degree I used to. I also have had extreme manic episodes where not even on drugs, but I'm thinking drugs had something to do with it somewhere. But basically the coming off of them, I'm not sure, but I've had some very strange times in my life where, yeah, I get it. I know what that's like for real. I know what you mean. So I have all that as well. Yeah,
for sure. And like, if we like bring it to a more modern place, there are in existence, but there have been some really, really dramatic effects of this superstition in association with drugs in terms of cults, in terms of people taking their own lives because of experiences that they've had along with some faithful leader, who takes them and shows them all these things. And here's the reason why this drug is impacting you. It's not because of anything in the drug. It's actually because I have a connection to some godlike figure. It happens all the time. It's maybe not as widespread as it was going into even, let's say, like the 17 and 1800s, before we even knew what these substances were. But people kind of were starting to develop science and figure it out. But it still happens. You can still catch yourself going into that sort of place.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, do you guys know what the most used drug in the world is?
Alcohol? Would that
be?
Okay. That's
right. Yeah, it's the most used. It's the most commonly accepted. We've all done it. It's funny to say do alcohol when talking about a drug, but I
mainline it. Shoot it right out.
Alcohol is the most used. It does have an effect on our brains, a pretty dramatic one, actually. Maybe not as dramatic as some of the other drugs that I'll be talking about, but it also has the biggest tie-in to every major religion that's alive today. It is talked about. It is there's religious explanations for it. This cause and effect. If you are a believer of one religion and you're listening to this, then I'm assuming you're a non-believer of another one. Those other ones have a cause and effect between alcohol and their religion. And there's a few reasons for this. It causes euphoria. It increases pleasure, sociability, relieves inhibitions, right? This is back when it's a liquid, if I were in like 100 BC and I drank alcohol, why am I feeling this way? But also there's a really cool thing. I don't know if anyone's ever been to a vineyard or to a distillery. When yeast makes alcohol, yeast are these microbiotic organisms that you can't see with your eye. When they make alcohol, they basically eat sugar, and then their end product is alcohol. They create a ton of heat. So just naturally, this liquid will boil without any heat, right? Without any flame. So if you're in ancient times and you've got a pot of grape juice that you were thinking of drinking later, right? And you sit it outside, yeast is all around. There's probably yeast on my face right now. It's all around us. the yeast start attacking it, just starts bubbling naturally. You start to create, oh my gosh, this is something mystical, even though we have a
Yeah.
scientific process for it now. And that's like, there's this Professor John Boyer at Virginia Tech. He does this excellent web series called The Geography of Wine. It's on YouTube. I watched it when I was a server at a restaurant before COVID, and I had to have all this wine knowledge. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm going to take this class, and I ended up loving it. But he talks about this mystical property of wine and how it's infused into all of our modern cultural associations with wine, right? It is the blood of Christ for Christians. You know, it is this
Yeah.
godlike liquid. In Islam, it is an evil, you know, it's the bubbling liquid of hell. And those we can kind of associate to this cats thing, right? If you had a positive experience with this liquid, as your basis for it, or let's say a series of positive experiences, maybe the people on the Christian end of this historical path had these great experiences, and they're like, oh my gosh, this is the connection to something that I have been missing, you know? And then on the other side, let's say you got really drunk, you're like, over a period of time, you have all these negative, kind of the negative opinion of alcohol that a lot of people have today in terms of drinking and driving and all these other things. Then it is an evil, it is something to be banned, when really it's a microbiotic organism that poops out alcohol.
Yeah, it's completely separate from any kind of morality or any kind of the higher opinions or righteousness or anything. It's literally just a substance.
Yeah, if you
It,
think of it like that, it's just a substance, and
yeah,
really, it attacks your body. We can say there are some negative things to it. There's some positive, maybe social things to it, but it is just a minuscule molecule. You know, it's
yeah,
just a molecule that some people's bodies make naturally. There are some people that have, I didn't write this down, but there are some people that have this disease that they're just drunk all the time because their
yeah.
body synthesizes alcohol.
It's
As,
really sad,
yeah, it is really sad.
actually.
I've
Yeah.
noticed that is true even within America. The idea towards alcohol, because when I was in New Orleans, I made the choice, getting so tired of the hangovers down there, to be sober during Mardi Gras, and I was treated pretty much like a pariah by my friends, because I mean, you know how it is when you're trying to be sober and everyone's drinking, and then they all didn't know how to be around me. So it was just so funny. Like around here, if you tried to be sober, you'd get support, but there it was like a shun. It was like, you know, every time you turn down a shot, they're just like, ugh, what's wrong with
Right?
you? So it's
Well,
just funny that you get the different views on it. Yeah.
and that's not just like an American thing. There's so many different cultures and associations with alcohol. You go and you drink, they have bars in Tehran and Iran. You go and drink there, you are that pariah again. You go to
Oh,
Russia, you go to Spain, and you don't drink, you're that outsider. You know, it's this.
Yeah.
yeah.
There is a communal attitude towards this one drug that if you don't do it or you do it openly,
Yeah.
you are considered either an other or a part, and it's this weird thing. And there's no, like, maybe you don't like coffee so much, that's
Yeah.
okay. Most places, if you don't drink the coffee, you're fine.
Yeah.
Other people will get their caffeine fix. It is this strange little thing, right?
I kind of feel that way because I don't smoke weed. So I in my friend groups I do feel not so much anymore, but you know when I was a little younger, it was a really weird thing that I didn't smoke. So I can kind of relate with that.
Yeah, I'm reading the chat and I'm watching on my phone. Dusty says that black cats are killed, tortured, and less adopted than any other cat just because of superstition. So we can see
Yeah.
how that's a small one, but wine and cats, they're not too different when you like start looking at them like this. You know, they have big impacts on the people that associate some sort of value in the experience, in this, like, the religious or spiritual existence of something that's not there.
Right.
You know, you wouldn't go, if you were Christian and you were at I'm not Christian, but I think mass, and they offer you the sacrament, it would be wrong not to drink the wine.
Yeah.
Maybe you've had a problem with alcohol in these modern times, you know, like you could get your way around it, but in like early Christian times, it would be wrong You drink it. This is the blood of Christ. You have the lucky, amazing opportunity to have this in your life.
Yeah, I have a lot to say about having grown up in that a little bit. I have a lot to say. I'm gonna wait and see how much you cover with. I'm thinking you might go there on your own. So we're gonna when we get into the psychedelics tied in with Christianity and whatnot. I'm sure you've got a lot of that.
We're pretty much there. So the wine was kind of like the icebreaker, because
Okay.
I feel like most of us kind of can get behind wine. Psychedelics, very different. Like I said, I'm not here to be for or against it, but this is kind of an impact. And at the very end, I'm going to kind of touch on like cocaine, crack, nicotine, opium, marijuana, and the different cycles and journeys they've had. But psychedelics really are what is interesting when it comes to the development of things. So I'm going to talk about two. One is the Amanita muscaria. Like it didn't have,
yes.
yeah, exactly. It didn't have a name back then, other than this like Latin term, but it's basically a psychedelic mushroom. It's not
the Mario mushroom.
Yeah, it's not one from South America, right? It's from the epicenter of our modern religions. It's from the Middle East. It's not mescaline, which is we can talk another day about South American peyote and drugs and stuff like that. But there is this magic mushroom in the Middle East that is prevalent. Like it's there. You can probably, if you know what to look for, where to look, the right climate, you can go out and you can find some. And in history, especially in history in association with these religions, there's a lot in Hinduism. Let's see, in the Rig Veda, I don't know if I said that correct, but in the Indian scripts, or the Sanskrit hymns, right? This is pre-Christianity, pre-Islam, pre-Judaism. There's a lot of talk about them, right? They are this connection, this ability to see the gods, to have experience with Ganesh or with, I'm not very well versed on Hinduism, but they talk about drinking soma. Soma is this like liquid, this drink made from this mushroom, right? And it allows them this experience. And this is happening. So Hinduism maybe a little bit more Ganges, India, right? But this is happening across the Middle East. They're having this experience, and they don't necessarily know what to make of it. They know it's when they ingest this plant, but you can see a lot of different religious ideas forming, and that's when we get to early Christian art, which is like.
Have you, just as a side note, have you ever done the Amanita? Have you ever
not,
sampled it?
I have not.
It's very different from what you think of as a traditional like psilocybin mushroom. Very different. It's much more of like a deliriant. It's kind of I don't. It's hard to compare it to anything, but it's like the hallucinations aren't as flowy and wavy as like you'd think of with like psilocybin. They're more like twitchy. And there's this kind of dysphoria with it. It's a very, very different psychedelic experience.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of disassociating too. So yeah, it's definitely interesting that had so much of an effect, because it definitely of the breadth of psychedelics that I've tried, it seems the least spiritual and a little bit more horrifying.
Well, and you can kind of like I don't want to make really drastic comparisons too much, but what you say there, if you look at kind of the American religions, we'll talk about like Native American religions, there's a lot more peaceful beauty going on, inner peace, all the different animals,
connectivity,
right? And if you look at the ones that came out of the Middle East, there's a lot of, just reading the Old Testament, it can give you nightmares sometimes.
Some anxiety, yeah. Like, I guess, yeah, like the Bible's description of angels, that could come out of an Amanita trip for sure. That shit's horrifying.
And I don't want to cut you off if you were about to say this, but I didn't know if you were moving on. But it is also some believe to be the origin of Christmas as well.
Oh, really? Yeah. Why don't you bring me down that? Because I don't know that one.
Yeah, basically, the mushroom is supposed to be. They used to go and gather them in sacks, and they would take them around, and I think they would even like drop them into people's chimneys, like for people to have. And the mushroom itself is red and white, which are the Christmas colors. They would be found in reindeer poop and all this kind of weird stuff. Like there's all these weird tie-ins. There's more than that. there's even more, like you can see the origin of Santa Claus coming. There's a really good cartoon, like it's one of those informational cartoons. They kind of, but it's really good. I can send it to you. But it's
Yeah, totally.
that's neat that you came across that, because that's. Have you heard of Graham Hancock? Have you ever done much research into him? He is really into all this stuff too, and just basically talks about how psychedelics were in the original. That this is kind of probably why people were so much more excited about religion back in the day, because they would walk down the aisles with these just basically plumes of marijuana smoke, and
Yeah.
they would get everyone really high. So you wouldn't just be talking about God. And then the wine generally had that mushroom in it, and they would all get, they'd be tripping. So you'd experience God. So I would be a lot more apt to get up on Sunday morning and go to church as well. Be like, come on, kids.
Yeah, I mean, I've met God a couple times. Good hand. And I'm not a believer, so that's extra. So I'm extra stubborn and defiant, considering that I've met the fucking man, and I still am like, nah.
Hey, you can't trust anybody.
Especially myself. I definitely cannot trust myself. So.
Well, what you said there, what you got to pretty much with the mushroom and the wine, the drink, and having the marijuana going down the aisles, it's kind of like the secret history now because it has all this stigma on it, but it was the basis of the religion. It's a very interesting, maybe not known. Maybe I'm just saying this and everyone knows it, but I
don't think a lot of people know, because there's a new book that just came out that is kind of, it's a friend of Graham Hancock, but this isn't stuff that I just happen to listen to a lot of podcasts because I work a third shift job that allows me to, and I'll come across this stuff. But I've talked to a few people, and generally people don't seem to know that there is that one cartoon that went around that's really cool. But I think it's pretty new stuff to most people. I don't think most people know.
Yeah, when I was a kid, I didn't know. I didn't know, like,
Turns out most Santa Claus was real. Yeah,
exactly.
I feel like most people, like you said, are kind of resistant to this too because of the stigma of, especially here in America, like enjoying drugs at all is either a slippery slope. Yeah. Or, you're already deranged and like you're a danger to yourself and others around you. Like it's pretty annoying.
It's rather crazy. And for maybe you're listening to this or watching this and you're like, I don't necessarily believe you'd go online and search just Christian art mushrooms. And you will find all of these. Let me see if I have the date on this. Oh, I don't. I want to say it's in the first maybe like 600 years of Christianity, but there's frescoes of Adam and Eve with a giant mushroom between them. There are mushroom elements in so many old Christianity has changed a lot over the millennia, right? But in the origins of it, there are all of these depictions, all of these insinuations, right? We think of this like the fruit of knowledge as being an apple. It doesn't really make too much sense for any of us who have ever eaten an apple. But imagine something that you could eat, the tree of knowledge, right? It's a tree, it's a plant. It may not be bearing fruit. You eat this mushroom and it gives you some sort of, maybe not knowledge, but sense of knowing, that is something that makes a lot more sense to a lot more people.
I agree. I think that's true. It's something Terence McKenna has also said a little bit of that, where he thinks apes evolved because the ones that evolved quicker apparently came from places where there were mushrooms. So they think that because when you eat mushrooms, your eyesight gets better, your sexual develop, like you have more of a sexual appetite. And they just think that's kind of what caused certain apes to maybe supersede the other apes. Apparently.
Oh, gotcha.
That's some of my concepts there I've heard, but
I like that. I see that opening of the mind. If anyone's ever had a drug experience, maybe not all drug experiences, but a lot of times you're aware of things, at least inside yourself, that you weren't aware of before. And that can be really enlightening and cool.
It's crazy the connections that it makes, like physiologically. Like they've put given somebody LSD and put them in like a brain scan, and like the parts of their brains that are lighting up and lining up with each other are just so I'm not going to say unnatural because it's a natural process, but it's just so not your everyday interactivity. So you have like the speech part of your brain literally like communicating with the like your occipital lobe or something, and you're processing what people are saying or what you're saying in a visual way, which is impossible to explain to anybody who's never experienced it before. But it's just, it a lot, oftentimes it can only be described as a religious, spiritual experience when you are connecting parts of yourself that are, have not been connected previously.
Yeah.
And really just makes you appreciate just the fragile nature of our perception in general. So it's hard to, when you're in that state, to deny that there's something, I don't know, like
Right?
a presence or something that is like, wow, this is fascinating. Like how, like I remember one time I was in the middle of Pittsburgh. We went to a park, and I just like started hugging the ground because I was just like, oh, Mother Earth, how you care for us, and it was like, a hippie moment for me, especially, who is usually a little bit more anarchic about it, but
No, but that's the beauty of it, right? Because
yeah,
it's generating these feelings, these emotions, these chemical responses in your brain that your body's actually making. A lot of people think that the drug itself is going into your system and causing you to do certain things. Maybe
right.
it'll shut down, like for instance, cocaine. Cocaine does not make you super excited and happy and all these things. It just shuts down an inhibitor of things
Yeah.
that are already inside your brain. It
Yeah,
shuts down
probably
your
mostly in your prefrontal cortex, that things that says maybe you shouldn't do that. Let's have a realistic approach to this. No, you're
Totally.
not gonna, when you wake up, start a business with a friend that you haven't seen in 5 years, and sell off all of your belongings and move
Yeah.
to India.
Do you guys I want to ask this. Do you guys have like a time limit? Because I do have just a few more things.
No,
Not really. No,
we're good.
no.
Okay, so basically this mushroom's there, right? We have all this religious depiction of it. We have some scripture. We have just the passage of knowledge down about this experience, right? We have these kind of Christian-esque cults as well that erupt around it, and they're connected, but maybe not the Christianity that we know and love today. Know and maybe love today. But at the same time, there's ergot, which, if you don't know of ergot, it's a fungus, right? And it grows on wheat. It grows on, or no, wait, not wheat. It grows on rye, and rye-related plants, and that's
Yeah.
why certain areas that have wheat, wheat's immune to it pretty much.
Mhm.
And this is also taking up time, like taking up a lot of historical significance in this part of time, right? It's this fungus. It's what LSD is synthesized from. So
Mhm.
if you want to think about maybe like hippie artwork and stuff like that, like the swirling lines that we were talking about earlier,
Yeah.
it's that kind of experience, but in its raw
Fractal.
and its fungal form, it also causes a lot of sickness, death, gangrene, right? An
Mhm.
ergot infestation in a particularly wet time on the entire community's rye plants that they make all this bread from. It's also heat resistant, so you can make it into bread and it will survive the process of fermentation for the bread and the
Wow.
baking, and you will eat it and you will still have it.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and so there are these massive events in Europe that are happening because of these ergot infestations, and this is one actually where people are a little bit more scientific. They're not associating meaning to it other than this fungus is bad. It makes me sick. We need to fix this,
Yeah.
And normally it would be stop eating bread, and we'll treat the symptoms as best we can. A lot of people developed gangrene, lost limbs. A lot of people died. If you've ever heard of St. Anthony's fire, it's the Antonites. It's this whole army that was involved in a raid on the Ottoman Empire. They all got it because all of their food sources were infested with it, and a
Jeez.
lot of them died. So it was just massive. Basically, they lost the war, but not because of the other side. They lost it because
Of food poisoning,
of food
essentially.
poisoning. Yeah.
Is it at least a trippy death? Do you know, or
It
is
is.
it like
It is.
horrifying? I
Yeah.
guess that's
So
extra horrifying because you don't know
yeah,
what the hell's
here I
happening.
have once contracted from rye bread, Ergotism causes severe convulsions, muscle spasms, delusions, the sensation of crawling under the skin, and in extreme
Oh.
cases, gangrene and death. So you do get
Whew.
this kind of experience. I'm not going to say it's a good experience, and we're going to go
Yeah.
into one specific example, a well-known one, but in the 1930s, Albert Hoffman, who's kind of like the father of LSD, he's studying this fungus, right? And he
Hmm.
extracts, creates, synthesizes LSD. He's the first guy ever to have a trip. It's like
Accidentally.
accidentally, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's this moment, this aha moment where a lot of dots are starting to be connected, and it might not be until like years from now when we fully know. But this one fungus was so prolific. It was in such a needed resource. It was in bread, right? It was in the dietary staple of so many different cultures, and it can have lasting effects. And obviously, the whole army, the St. Anthony's Fire, the Antonites, that one's one that they were aware of at the time. But here's the really cool one. And this may be something that you've heard before and may be new to you, but when it was new to me, I was just like, whoa, because I grew up knowing about this. This was something I knew. And it's in January 1692, when 9-year-old Elizabeth Parris and 11-year-old Abigail Williams began having fits, including violent contortions and uncontrollable outbursts of screaming. They basically said that certain people in their community must have bewitched them because they were having hallucinations of things that weren't there.
Oh
And
God.
it started off the Salem witch trials.
Ah,
Oh my God.
Isn't that it's insane to think about? So in this hypothesis, I'm going to call it a hypothesis. I said I would. We can't really prove this, right? But
Right.
in 1976, Dr. Linda Caporael of the Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, she found evidence that supported this hypothesis. She published this giant paper in psychology reports or psychology journals at the time. It was published by the New York Times. And then it was sort of swept under the rug by religion and historians as like, oh, well, that sounds cool, but maybe something else was going on. Even though, so that year, the exact perfect conditions were in place for this fungus to have a massive outbreak to affect many people. And it causes everything from the convulsions to think about an LSD trip. You can have a good trip, you can have a bad trip. If you have a bad trip and you're looking at someone's face, that face gets distorted and
Oh, it's
crazy.
scary. Yeah.
Imagine you're a 9-year-old girl, you've eaten some tainted bread, you start on your trip, you start to freak out because you're not associating it to the bread, right? You're having
Right.
this experience. And by this point, witches have kind of been like a thing that people know and talk about. It's pre-Halloween days, but
Yeah. I mean, probably also in conjunction with drug-related stuff. I mean, we were talking about the boiling wine by itself,
yeah, yeah.
like that's like a cauldron, like I don't know. I'm just
Yeah,
throwing
there
that
are
out
there
there.
are all of these different natural things that today we understand. But
Yeah.
if you put yourself in the mindset of someone who's experiencing it for the first time, or maybe experiencing it but been told by someone you trust that, oh, that's just God, honey, or like something like that, you create these things. And since God doesn't make me convulse and it doesn't make me see
Well,
my
depending on what
walls
church you go
melting,
to.
yeah, depending on what church you go to. Um, then it must be that evil face that I saw across the street, the old woman who lives in the house next door. And then we can attribute a bunch more of it to kind of mob mentality,
Mhm.
hysteria, but the potential for this to be true is so high. It's
Yeah.
so high, and we'll never know. It'll always be a hypothesis.
Yeah.
But it's this massive event that's been, it keeps going. Like Donald Trump. Donald Trump has talked about witch hunts in his administration and the public. It is this lasting thing that has impact, and it could just be from a tiny little molecule affecting a few people's brains without them
Yep.
knowing.
And that makes sense too, because like if you watch, or if like you I guess you watch like recreations of like Greek and Roman shows. You know, they have like the oracles or whatever, and like I don't remember what movie it was. Was it like the movie 300, I think? But they portrayed their oracle was like a young girl, and she was like spazzing all over the place with like the smoke and stuff. And it's like a lot of these like shamans and mystical people. I mean, you even go as far as like the voodoo doctors and stuff like that. Probably these people are probably just tripping balls most of the time.
Well, and like that's the thing is like we kind of have the scientific understanding of what these things are, right?
Yeah.
About how they work on our brains
For the most part.
We also don't know. We don't
Right.
know like how that sparked, so maybe they have all the answers and we're sitting here saying, well, we understand these mechanics, right? There's a lot of things like that, especially when you start talking to modern day religious people. They'll say, oh, of course, I don't believe that this happened, but I believe in that God is behind the mechanics of evolution. Maybe I don't believe. Yeah, like I believe in evolution.
God the programmer
but I believe
versus
that was
yeah.
So
to jump back a little bit, just what you were saying with Trump, I was gonna say, he's someone that really needs psychedelics, but then it occurred to me, that the shaman dude or whatever, the guy with the big bull horns that raided the Capitol, whatever what do they call
Q
him?
shaman.
Yeah, QAnon shaman. Like that guy, if you go to his Facebook page, he is a big proponent of all, like he's super psychedelic, but tied in with
and
like
vegan.
white nationalism. It's like fucking like,
yeah,
that sucks.
Yeah.
Like, how could you go through all that and still come up with that consensus? Like, so it bothers me. But I do remember there'd be times where I'd be in high school, and it just really goes to show you, man, like, is it what's already truly in somebody? Because I like to believe I'm a good person. I think I am. I mean, I'm at least questioning whether I'm a good person. I think people that are evil assume, well, some people know, like, some people know, yeah, I'm rotten. But others, like, they think they're on the right side, but they're not looking at what they're doing. But I would be tripping with certain people and they'd just be, they'd be having a whole different type of trip, just something really shallow. Or they'd be like, I'd just be like, wow, what's going on with this guy? Like, how's he not seeing what I'm seeing or feeling these big emotions or just things that like just life-changing shit. But it is scary how it ties in with the whole new alt-right movement, because they really are kind of adopting a lot of the psychedelic. And I have to blame Joe Rogan a little bit for that. We have a very mixed emotional relationship with Joe Rogan here. I like some of his stuff, but I also think he's a fucking douchebag in many ways. But you get to Terrence McKenna, you get to like this guy Anthony Peake, and it's really neat how they're tying in science with the old beliefs. They're tying in like what we learned from the tribes that we've tried to get rid of, because they had a lot of really interesting stuff they learned for all those years, and we're tying it in with science. And I like seeing the melting of those two things together. I think that's what's going to help us kind of,
Yeah. And bringing it to a more modern sense, like how did we get from that to this? How do we get from mushrooms in church to if you do mushrooms, you're going to jail?
Nixon.
Like
Richard Nixon.
Yeah, that's a really big one. Well, before Nixon, there has been a gradual change. Mushrooms left church before Nixon got into office.
Yeah, that's true. Good point. Good point.
So a conservatism kind of waved across a lot of religions, right? There are some that have been really steadfast. Like if you think about Islam, it really hasn't shifted too much. There's different sects of it. There's the Sunni and the Shia and that kind of thing. But Christianity, this massive, massive religion, and it's all across the globe, it's kind of become conservativized. I don't know how it is, how to say that. But
I don't know.
yeah, it was a gradual thing. And if you look, it's a lot of the people in power, right? They want to have control over their subjects. I'm not talking about like leaders of the church. I'm talking about leaders of nations, of empires. This control is important to them. Certain drugs, like if we look at the field of drugs, certain drugs make that control way easier. Alcohol, if my country is happy, if my country has this substance that they can indulge in, but it will also not take over and it won't ruin my commerce. We can associate it with the festivals and the things that go on. Alcohol is a wonderful drug for a leader to have on his country. Some of the other ones, mushrooms, maybe not, because you get to thinking, you start to think,
Why does money exist?
Yeah, why is this happening when he said that, and how can we make this better,
Yeah.
and
Damn those people that want to make things better. Damn
Authority
them.
authority just looks laughable when you're on a trip, man. They just look goofy, man.
Exactly.
I have had interactions with police while on psychedelics where I am literally laughing. I'm very lucky. I did not get hurt, but like, yeah, it's silly. It's silly.
And you can track that kind of progression all the way up to Nixon, right?
Yeah.
So it starts off with maybe the emperors of Rome and all these other people, and you track this limiting of a thing, a thing that used to be coveted by all is the reason for our religious beliefs. And you start to see it leaving the church. You start to see it leaving what the current society would consider good, or right to do. And then up until the 60s, Nixon's involved in this war, and he's got all of these people that are still taking this. Like, it never went away. We can talk about any period of history. We can talk about the Civil War and drugs. It's not like it just appeared suddenly. LSD did, for sure. But mushrooms and other hallucinogenic and mind-altering drugs were always there. But it started to be the experience that the publicized experience of the counter-war movement. And at the same time, you've got cocaine, which had its transition from religious thing in Southern America to medicine in North America, to commerce with Coca-Cola in America, to crack cocaine on the street, recreational.
Yeah, to implementing a new form of slavery.
Yeah, exactly. So there's these two things that at this point in time are generally disliked by a conservative group of people, generally liked by two separate factions, sometimes integrated, of American society that are adamantly standing up to the authority figure. And at that moment, Nixon starts the war on drugs. And he cracks down on, there's many drugs going on, by the way, at this point. But he cracks down specifically. And one of his aides later on, I think it was actually relatively recently, said that the reason why is this, cracks down on crack to set back the black population, cracks down on LSD and hallucinogenic drugs to end or to fight against the hippie movement that was very counter administration.
Yep.
There's so many interesting sides to that too. A friend of mine made a documentary. His name's John Potash. You can look him up. It's pretty controversial stuff. I don't always agree with all of it, but when it comes to LSD and definitely heroin, he starts back on and I'm sure we're going to get to this, but he starts back with the opium wars and how they realized, the elites basically realized they could keep people pacified with opium, and so that's why we have all these opium fields that are owned, and all these CIA people have come out and spoken about how they've been running opium for our country, and our country's one of the main dealers of it, and giving it to our own citizens. But what's so interesting about all that and all this we're talking about is I just listened to a podcast from a guy who seemed very valid. I wish I could remember his name right now, but he was smart, athletic looking dude, and he swears up and down, he goes, I take heroin, cocaine with my wife recreationally. I'm a healthy person. I keep a job. I have a family. I'm doing fine because I know how to. He gets it from the purest places and the best places. And he says a lot of this really is Hollywood created. Plus, people are just getting really horrible shit. And also, if someone's already prone to maybe having certain characteristics, this stuff's not going to help that. But he's saying he basically goes around to the groups of people, and he's really a pro drug component. Like, he says we can do these drugs and live full lives and have these drugs in our lives and not all go to shit. And I do them with circles of people all the time that are really wealthy. And so that's a whole I don't know if I agree with that. I'm just saying I think it's a really interesting point of view that there's kind of this movement also happening where they kind of want to legalize everything too, which some countries,
absolutely.
Some country just did that, and I guess crime went down. Was it Brazil?
So
yeah.
Portugal has
Portugal, yeah.
decriminalized all of its drugs, and crime's gone down. They've started going like it's not if a cop finds you with anything, let's
Yeah.
say you've got some rocks on you, right?
Yeah.
The cop is just going to take them away, and he's going to recommend, or she is going to recommend that you go see a specialist to help you with any sort of addiction or any other struggles that you're having, right?
Fantastic.
Yeah, it's perfect. It's wonderful. The people that they are going, it's still illegal to import drugs, right? So it's not like, okay, now we can all go to Portugal and have fun.
Right.
Although I've been to Portugal and I have had fun. But if you bring a giant boatload of something from like Colombia, then and they stop you, you're still going to go to prison, or they're going to
Sure.
confiscate everything.
Yeah, because that's like a trade crime that you're stepping on somebody's money there. So
stepping on someone's money. It's illegal to sell. It's illegal to sell as well. So they're really going not after the users. The users, a lot of times, especially people who are in negative situations, they are not necessarily happy with the situation that they found themselves in, that they need this drug. Some people are, let's have fun. I like this. This is my life. I'm functional. A lot of times getting into the system will make it even worse,
Yeah. Absolutely.
What is that old test they did with the mice? Wasn't there the test with the mice? Remember where they had the mice like go and hit the little button for the opium, and they found that the mice that lived in these very constrained, basically jail cells,
like
would be
isolation,
just tapping that shit, like, because they're like, I'm fucking miserable. But then they gave these other mice, as funny as it sounds, like these whole cities and other mice to play with, and they were not doing it as much. They had like full lives, so they was more responsibly used. Dusty Estep, who is going to be a future guest one day, he does a lot of great activism in the area. He is saying fucking Nixon every time, yes. And he says kids don't try drugs as much since they legalized everything, according to studies in Portugal. So that's an interesting point.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. You take away the allure of doing something illegal and hiding from your parents. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, I can just think back to when I was a kid, and like there were, I don't know if you had friends like this, but there were those kids whose parents were like, I don't care if you drink, but you got to do it in the house, and you got to let me know, and like you got to be safe. I always thought that was batshit crazy, because my parents are 100% anti all that shit. And I mean, and look how I turned out. So good job, parents. I mean, that's almost right there is a testament against their technique of trying to crack down on that. Versus these people, and it makes more sense. Like, hey, if you're gonna do it safely. Let me know about it. It's fine. It's not a big deal. Like, you're gonna do it eventually. Might as well do it under proper supervision.
Yeah.
And
no,
I'm a huge proponent of legalizing all drugs, regulating. It's like just get because like what you were saying, Casey. Like the tainted street drugs. I mean, you hear about like fentanyl killing people left and right. And that's because of desperation. That's because of illegality. That's because people like a lack of regulation and of demonization.
It's the same thing that happened with
prohibition. It's a vicious cycle.
The same thing that happened with prohibition in the 20s and 30s. Is like they, people were dying in the streets from shitty alcohol because and then they started, just eventually, hopefully the fucking powers that be will figure it out. I don't know.
They won't, but they'll have to submit to our will. They won't figure it out, but they'll have to submit to our will.
There is.
Yep.
We're gonna keep crashing their hedge funds if they don't legalize fucking drugs.
They treat everyone like children. I mean, basically, we're being told by other adults how to be. It's like come on, we are all adults. So I mean, sure, give me your opinion, but you don't force me what I want to put in my body or who I want to get into their bodies. Whatever. Our bodies are our bodies. God damn it, is what I'm trying to fucking say.
Yeah. You guys are touching on like the last little piece of this, and it's one that I think a lot of us ignore or don't really think too much about, but it is commerce and it is medicine, right? So before, let's say, in the 1800s and before that, right? Medicine was still kind of this not all put together thing. We were talking about bloodletting in Greece, but we had leeches here in the US. Someone gets a certain type of sickness, then we need to drain their bile, so these like medical practices were really, really we were talking about superstition. They were superstition based. They were 100% superstition based. I saw this work with someone else, so I'm going to try it on you. And it may have absolutely nothing to do with the problem, and you may get better because of something else that you did. Maybe you stopped eating wheat with ergot in it, but because you got better, the doctor's like, well, that is a proof that this leech is going to solve everyone's problems. And when these substances, when we start to discover what these substances are, we start to synthesize them in labs, we start to identify them, they pretty much all go through the same change, right? You can think about marijuana, you can think about cocaine, you can think about opium, you can think about hallucinogenics. They go through this change from spiritual practice, like they were a spiritual practice in so many different things, to a medical thing.
Yeah, very clinical.
To a medical object, because now we have the answer. We know what the thing is. Before we didn't. It was mystical. The water was bubbling, we couldn't figure it out. Now that we know that it's this thing, we can define it. It is now a tool. It's a tool, but it's a tool that when medicine gets there, like when they realize, oh, we know all the actual effects of this, we're going to commercialize it and we're going to make a lot of money off of it. And suddenly all of these simple, not so some of them are complex, but all these compounds that were available to everyone are also being made illegal. And it's not just the war on drugs and Nixon. It is this shift. Pretty much any drug out there that is illegal has a medicinal counterpart, a pharmaceutical counterpart.
Right.
And if it were to be legal, people would self-medicate. People would self-medicate. Maybe they would get their doses wrong. Maybe they are being protected by the system, right? Maybe we're preventing a lot of overdoses and a lot of addictions. But in the hospital
I think the numbers
world,
don't. Yeah, I don't think the numbers balance out. I think it's doing
far
more damage. Yeah.
How much money are we spending on this war on drugs? Which drugs is winning? The drugs are winning for sure.
Yeah.
There is a massive amount of addictions that come out of the hospital world that
for sure.
don't need to take place at all, because the hospital wants to make money on drugs that maybe the patient doesn't need or want. When I got my wisdom teeth out, I was dating a drug addict, a recovering drug addict, and I told my dentist, I don't want any painkillers. Like, I just don't want them. He had to ask me 3 or 4 more times, like, are you sure? It's going to be painful. You're not going to like it. Let me give this to you. Let me give you the prescription just in case you change your mind. And literally every single time I said, no, like, I don't want this. And you know what? I was fine. I had applesauce and I put an ice pack on it and I was fine.
That's crazy. So what do you think they get kickbacks on that, is what you're saying, basically?
For sure they do.
Yeah. They make more money. Like, it's a business, it's a business. You make more money when you sell more.
And then you can think about like the textile industry as well, like, because like hemp, the amount of applications that hemp and or just THC in general has in a real world situation, where you can do things that are way more, way more like way cheaper. That is, way more replenishable as far as like resource goes. It's crazy. Hemp is so versatile, but is caught underneath the weed laws, and then you have like paper companies, construction companies,
the amount of
concrete lobbying against it.
Yeah, the environmental damage would be so much less, and we'd get so much more benefit. Isn't it like for every, like, doesn't hemp produce so much more than a tree or something of oxygen or all kinds of stuff? Like wait, I don't know if they produce. Wait, do we produce?
It's just that it grows like a weed. It's so easy to grow. I watched this documentary on like how when drugs, started becoming illegal with like the what was that like documentary, Reefer Madness?
Yeah.
Like during that era, that it was literally used like as a manufacturing it was meant to manufacture hate for Mexicans, which I don't know if you guys know, but the phrase marijuana is actually technically is a racist term. It was associated with weed to give a bad association with like immigrants from Mexico.
Wow.
And that them burning the weed across this country. Like I saw videos of it. They would just go out into the forest. It'd be like somewhere next to a highway or something, and would just start ripping out all these plants. It wasn't like somebody was growing them. They were just growing in the wild, and they just threw them on giant piles and lit them on fire. Which part of that sounds fun, but like it's just like it's just crazy.
It's a massive mess that we're in right now, because none of these substances are gone, right? We're not going to get rid of them, and
nor should we.
And the very, very wealthy are the ones that are profiting off of them, and the very, very poor are the ones that are getting all of the systemic problems that they don't really need involved with them.
Yeah, like talking back talking again about the crack epidemic. That the epidemic makes it sound like it was accidental, like the crack gate. The consequence for having the same amount of crack versus having the same amount of like cocaine, which was seen as like a rich white person's drug, Wall Street drug, versus a poor black person's drug. It was like 30 times the consequence for the same amount.
Yeah.
And then they have done studies and show that there were more white people addicted to crack actually than there were black people. So it wasn't even a racial thing. But at some point in LA, the people who were busted for crack were 100% black people. And we could talk about like classist issues and stuff. We could talk about how these things are, mostly classist, but there's with those two examples, it's pretty clear to see that there's definitely a racial element here as well.
100%.
It's hard to be reductionist about this.
They're definitely not gonna loosen the grip on that because any excuse they have to jail more people because they make money.
Yeah. The prison industrial complex is massive.
And all that shit. So, like you said, with anything, it's going to have to be the people uprising. It's going to have to be GameStop. We're going to have to take down. We're going to have to use GameStop as a vehicle for our anarchy. Let's do That's
this.
a beautiful thing that shows that they do listen when you rattle the tree hard enough. They do get scared, and so
you start messing with their bank accounts, their little digital numbers, and they'll respond.
That's when Jesus got on their fucking radar.
Oh yeah, start flipping the tables.
Crazy. Started flipping over the table.
He was probably high.
He was. We know he was.
He was on mushrooms.
Yeah, exactly. And one thing I wanted to say when you were talking about it being a racial thing is there's a lot of that in other histories of other drugs. If you look at opium in the U.S., Nixon wasn't the first to make a policy that particularly targeted a community. Opium was used against I'm going to say Japanese people, Asian Americans were all affected by it, but during World War II. And it became this thing, this was, how do we get these people down? And that was their manner of doing it. When in all honesty, the major opioid users today are white people. You go to any part of Ohio.
I was going to say Dayton. My God. Yeah.
Yeah. What's the Dave Chappelle joke where he basically is like, he's talking about how, how we all acted during crack. And now he's like, you guys got the opium now. Now it's a white. It's like basically kind of laughing at us because now.
Yeah. Well, and that one was almost accidental. I would say there's a lot of manufacturing going on there, but like that one was like, white people fell into that on accident, and now we have to respond because we have these 19-year-old blonde girls, ODing, and it's real sad because she broke her arm or something at cheerleader practice, and now is what we would consider normally the highest echelon of criminal. The most like I don't know, like put it on a pedestal of evil, of vile behavior.
Well, yeah,
which is completely inappropriate, and I don't agree with that at all.
Jazz musicians,
obviously.
They always laid it on the jazz musicians, just like the jazz musicians that did the heroin and the weeds. You don't want to be like them dirty jazz musicians.
Yes, I do.
Yeah, I do.
Right?
And then that's what they always misunderstood the concept of maybe they know this, I don't know, but it just seems like every time you say something's bad for you, a lot of people run towards that thing. And that's a really interesting human psychology of like, it's either we don't like being told, well, we've seen it with the mask debate, like people just don't like being told what to do, which I like that about the human spirit, except for when it's stupid.
Except for when it hurts humanity.
Like,
yeah.
At some points, because they're also taking away my freedom by not wearing a
Right.
mask. You fuckers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Nobody gets hurt if you do hair. Well, if you choose
No,
to do heroin,
that's not necessarily true.
Well, we
I'm trying
don't,
to
but we
say-
don't blame the heroin though.
Yeah.
You don't blame the heroin. That's
Don't
step
blame
one
the
of being a
heroin.
drug user. You don't blame the
I
drug.
would confidently say that there's probably not a single person out there who's addicted to wearing a mask.
Yeah.
So that's the
It is
difference.
warm. It's
I
kind of
might-
nice.
I might
but
be soon though.
I don't know. I'm kind of jonesing.
This
Right?
is gotta put them. I don't feel safe. This is. You don't have to wrap up yet, but I just wanted to say this has been really great, and I want to keep doing this. I'm gonna contact you again soon. But if you ever have a story that you're just itching to do, feel free, man. We love it because James
Yeah.
puts
Totally.
together some stories. I'm pretty lazy. Like I may read a paragraph or two. I have like little points and bits, but I don't have that much journalist in me. I've been learning how to be more of a journalist, but I really liked your TED Talk approach. It's
Yeah.
really
Thank
cool.
you. Yeah, thank you for
Yeah.
listening
Thanks
to
for
my
coming
TED
on
Talk.
here.
Yeah, it's good.
Next time, my only criticism, you got to have one of those clickers. You got to have a slideshow. That's all
Yeah, we
I'm
want a
saying.
slideshow.
Yeah.
Does
No.
does this
Just kidding.
do? I had this idea. Does this do backgrounds?
Yeah,
I think it does. Yeah. Yeah. If
I
you
was
go to
thinking
the
I could
settings.
do like backgrounds and be in front of it.
Oh,
and be
that would
like-
be great.
and then
That'd be
change
really
the
cool.
background.
That would be really funny.
I need pictures. My brain needs pictures. I don't.
You guys aren't seeing the stream, but I did pull up some pictures during the experience.
cool.
So
Awesome.
I will. I'm trying to get more multimedia with it. So when you were talking about
Yeah.
the Christian art,
Did you
with the
pull up that
mushrooms, I
cathedral
did.
one?
yeah,
It's-
yeah,
It's really
It's-
cool.
some interesting stuff. Yeah, really
Yeah.
weird.
But that is all I had. I don't have anything else.
I want to
Great.
do a part 2 and a part 3 and a infinity.
Yeah.
Because we didn't even get into DMT. We
Right.
didn't get into
Right.
like I think heroin we just kind of tapped on there, but there's so much with the heroin.
Yeah.
And
We
then
can talk
s-
about there's a bunch of experiments in the through the FBI to Timothy Leary to there's
Yeah.
all these different things.
MK Ultra.
Yeah.
you want to get a part 2 going, or whatever you want to do if you feel
Yeah.
like, because I like
I'm down.
it's great. All right.
Yeah. Actually, on that note of being more multimedia and stuff, for those of you guys who are audio only, definitely check us out on Twitch. We have our own channel, The Red Left, on there, and on YouTube, and we're gonna be streaming to Facebook again. So check us out on our pages so that you can see our super fancy multimedia green screen background slideshows.
James, is this the first time, James, we've been on all 3 platforms at once? Is this the first we've?
No, we did it before, but this is we have to go through a personal page now. It's
Okay.
kind of technical. This is the free way to do it. I'm doing it. I'm being cheap about it because we don't make any money doing this. So
I feel like we're wrapping up a little bit. But
Yeah.
I did want to ask. First off, I want to bring up once again. Check out Bubbles podcast.
yes,
Do you like being called Bubble? By the way,
Yeah, it's Bubble, but honestly, I've gotten so used to Bubbles through protesting. People call me both. It's interchangeable.
all right. But Killed. It's an amazing podcast. I've listened to the majority of it. I think I'm going to get back on it actually probably tonight. But you did bring up one thing I wanted to ask you about, and I was really curious if you're going to continue. I know it's not possible in the current day and age, but you had talked about a podcast you were working on where you were going around to other countries, and
Yeah.
could you think that would ever be like an Anthony Bourdain type YouTube show possibly?
I wanted it to be. That's just too much work for me personally to make all those videos. But I could see if I ever figure out how to do it, making it into some sort of visual series.
I would edit them. I'd edit them for you for free.
Yeah, you want to come travel the world with me?
Yeah, actually, I guess I would have to probably come on. But I guess it's the filming that's the hard part for you, not
Yeah.
the editing necessarily. I got you, man. If I could, I would. Maybe.
One thing that's really interesting, it's funny, I wasn't going to bring up Portugal, but there is an episode I did interviews in Portugal, and it's about the gay community there and how the legal changes in drugs are really rampant in pretty much all of the world's gay communities or LGBTQ communities, and how those have had an impact. And so I meet with some pretty cool Portuguese people.
I just
Nice.
feel like that concept is fabulous, and I think that would really take off for you. I mean, all things you're doing are great, but that one, I don't know. There's something in me just saying. But then again, it's probably also the hardest to do, so that kind of sucks.
It is. Well,
Yeah.
the title of that was going to be, it's still, I'm still making it a project. I'm just not working on it right now. But it's Around the World with 80 Gays. And so there's supposed to be 80 episodes. Each one's a different country with all of its different social issues as they relate to the LGBTQ community there. And yeah, it's a big undertaking.
How old are you?
Oof.
I am at 27. I had to think for a second.
All right. Well, just do. I mean, the way things are going with science and robot, I'd say do one a year, and you'll be good. Like you'll get your 80 in there.
Well, it's funny. When I first started, I was releasing them. I took them all off, but I had about 12 out there at one point. They were all about an hour long each, and I did that in, I think, a little less than a year. So
wow.
I was trucking.
Jeez.
And I burnt out.
Why'd
Yeah,
you take 'em off
yeah.
there? Why'd you take 'em off there?
So you've listened to this more recent podcast of mine with Pam. The quality is so much better on what I'm doing now.
Oh, okay, I got you.
And I took off more than I could chew. I did all these interviews, but I didn't do them in a way that I could just release the interview kind of like you're doing with me now. Instead, I did it more of the style of the podcast I'm doing with Pam, where it's all this editing work, all of this audio, like music backgrounds and interesting story, This American Life type thing. And yeah, it got overwhelming, and COVID won't let me travel.
Yeah. Well, maybe it's good that you can kind of regroup. I mean, it's not good, but maybe it's a nice timing that you can kind of regroup and maybe try to refocus. And I have to believe that art will be better for this, because if I don't believe that, then I don't know what to believe in. But
I've definitely been focusing a little more on quality. I'm pretty lazy in that area. I just like to push stuff out there, but I've noticed.
yeah, that's
I'm
my
not so
usual
much-
approach too.
Yeah, but I'm getting
Got to be more
less-
patient.
Yeah, it's easier to focus now because there's nothing else. It's like, I want to drag things out. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
make a project last a couple weeks so I have something to think about other than.
Yeah.
Right.
All right.
All right,
Well,
guys. Well, this was a great conversation. Thanks again for coming on. It was always a pleasure talking with you. And yeah, like Casey said, we'll definitely have you on again in the future.
Hey,
Yeah.
I do want to know, did you guys know the witch trials thing before?
No.
I did not know that was connected to that. No, I had no idea.
Not weird to think it could have just been one big acid trip.
Yeah.
It makes so much of that stuff makes sense to me, honestly. Like it just clicks, It's like, okay, well, yeah. 'Cause for all of the events in my life and that having to do with drugs, it makes sense.
I learned quite a bit from that, and I do quite a good amount of research on that myself. Just it kind of happened by the podcast I listened to, but oh boy, I had my brain fart for the one show. I always have the thing I was going to say to you, and it's totally gone. God damn it.
It's okay. For the next show, you have to write it down.
I'll remember.
Yeah.
Shit. Anyway, I'm old.
Eh.
All right. We love you,
All right,
Bubble.
guys.
Love you
All right.
too.
We'll see ya.
All right.
Stay
bye.
sane, guys.